Hi, everybody, and welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight for our Meet the Makers series. My name is Elizabeth Daly, and I'm the Executive Director of the NFOSD. For those of you who regularly join our virtual events, you'll know that NFOSD President Ed Steger generally MCs these. Ed is traveling tonight, but will be back for our May event. Our goal with the Meet the Makers series is to offer our community access to those who have created products specific for people with swallowing disorders. Our series is not meant to be promotional, but rather informational. We want to give you the opportunity to ask the creators of these products your questions, learn more about how these products can help people with swallowing difficulties, and make connections so that your voices feel appreciated among our industry leaders. We thank you for joining us this evening and hope that you find this series helpful. The makers in this series are volunteering their time to share this information with us. They have not paid to participate in this series, nor was it required that they be a past or current financial sponsor of the foundation, although many companies, just like TIMS, are. One second here. Before we begin, I would like to recognize Bracco Diagnostics for their continued support of the NFOSD in the form of an unrestricted educational grant that allows us to make our online learning events free to our community, regardless of your membership status. For those of you who made a donation upon registering for this event or other events, I want to thank you. It's only with the generous donations of our community and our sponsors that we are able to advance our mission to support those impacted by dysphagia. I also want to recognize our educational sponsors, which include Passy Mirror, Simply Thick, and Cranio Rehab. Before I turn over the presentation, I want to share a few announcements about upcoming events and initiatives. The NFOSD is currently offering a $500 scholarship to an individual demonstrating excellent dysphagia volunteerism and advocacy, with an emphasis on international work being done. The deadline to apply for this or to nominate someone is May 31st. We are also in the process of preparing for Dysphagia Awareness Month, which takes place in June. We are looking for members of our community to share their story with us to help raise awareness. We are also hosting our annual t-shirt fundraiser right now. This year's t-shirt was designed by Dr. Ianessa Humbert. Shirts start at $35 and are a great way to start conversations. They also make great gifts. The deadline to purchase a shirt is May 14th. And then finally, we have 2 webinars scheduled for May that you won't want to miss. I'll be sending out more information about all of these events in a post-webinar email so that you will have the link by sometime tomorrow. Switching back to tonight's presentation, if you've participated in one of our events previously, you're probably familiar with our system. You will be muted throughout the presentation, but are encouraged to ask questions at any point during the presentation using the question box. There's 30 minutes reserved on this call for Q&A, so please don't be shy about asking any of your questions. We will record this presentation and make it available on our website within the next few days. No ASHA CEUs are provided for this, but you will receive a certificate of participation upon completion of the broadcast. And with that, I want to provide a reminder that tonight's broadcast is for informational and educational purposes only. Both the NFOSD and tonight's speakers do not intend to provide any diagnostic or treatment advice or recommendations. If you need assistance identifying a swallowing specialist, please reach out to us through email. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Tim Lauzon and Brooke Beilman of TIMS Medical. Tim has been with TIMS Medical for over 10 years as a regional sales manager, customer support and training manager, and now is the director of product marketing. Tim spends much of his time engaging clinical SLPs and researchers to understand how TIMS Medical can improve outcomes for people with dysphagia, facilitate the adoption of diagnostic standards, and streamline the SLP's daily workflow. Brooke is a full-time member of TIMS Medical, a part-time graduate school instructor, a board member for the Dysphagia Outreach Project, and serves patients in the acute and inpatient rehab settings. Brooke is passionate about improving clinician access to resources for evidence-based practice and leadership development. And with that, I would like to turn the presentation over to them. So give us just 1 second here, and we will do that.
Hi everybody. Oh, Elizabeth, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Awesome.
I can hear you just fine. Now it's in presentation mode. Excellent.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you to the NFOSD for having us this evening for the Meet the Makers series. So like Elizabeth said, my name is Brooke Beilman. I am the Director of Marketing and Communications here at TIMS Medical and am a practicing speech pathologist. And I'm joined by my colleague, Tim. So Tim, would you like to give a quick introduction of yourself?
Sure. Yeah, I'm our Director of Product Marketing, and like Elizabeth said at the beginning, I spend a lot of time looking, speaking to speech pathologists and researchers throughout the world, really, looking at how we can improve our product to help improve patient outcomes for dysphagia patients.
Thanks, Tim. So a couple of objectives. Our goal this evening is really to tailor this information specific to everyone in the audience. So we will be talking about dysphagia, including causes, signs, and symptoms, with a heavy emphasis on instrumental evaluation, so modified barium swallow studies and fees, as well as why it is important for us as speech language pathologists to be recording our studies. And then last but certainly not least, the tools accessible currently through the TIMS MVP software, as well as some additional projects coming down the pipeline. So with that, we'll go ahead and jump into our content. So a little bit about us at TIMS Medical, who we are and what we do. TIMS Medical is part of Foresight Imaging, which has been around since the 90s. And it is super exciting that in 2020, TIMS actually shipped our 5,000th system. So today in 2023, TIMS MVP is being utilized by thousands of clinicians, both here in the United States and abroad, for both MBS and fees. So it's really exciting that we now offer solutions not only for fluoro studies, but also for endoscopy. So if you're doing both MBS and fees, TIMS is applicable to you, and we can work with any radiology systems as well as any endoscopic system. So our goal really is to help improve patient outcomes by increasing efficiency in clinical practice and workflow and advocating for best practices. As Tim mentioned, the team at TIMS Medical has been working with speech pathologists around the world for a long time, really to help improve our workflow as speech pathologists so we can do what we love the most, which is really focusing on our patients. So with that, we're going to go into dysphagia, causes, signs, and symptoms. So if you're here with us this evening, you're probably very familiar with the term dysphagia, which is the medical terminology utilized to describe a swallowing disorder. As we know, swallowing is a continuum, so impairments can happen at any point along the continuum from the mouth, throat, and esophagus. And dysphagia can be caused by a plethora of issues, not limited to, but including brain injury, head and neck cancer, reflux, trauma, surgery, neurological disorders, and more. And additionally, we know that there can be a variety of signs and symptoms of dysphagia, which may include coughing, throat clearing during or after oral intake, unintentional or unexplained weight loss, issues with nourishment, dehydration, and adverse pulmonary events, to name a few. So again, if you're here with us this evening, you're probably very well familiar with speech language pathology and what we do, but just again, a quick overview. According to ASHA, the American Speech Language and Hearing Association, the role of the SLP is to optimize individuals' ability to communicate and swallow, thereby improving quality of life. So speech language pathologists serve people across the lifespan who have cognitive, communication, and swallowing disorders. Specifically related to dysphagia or swallowing issues, our role as speech language pathologists is to evaluate and treat the swallowing impairments, which often includes the utilization of instrumental evaluations, both fees and modified barium swallow studies. One of my favorite aspects of being a speech language pathologist is what I like to describe as detective work. In our title, we have the word pathology because we really are important in the process of identifying pathophysiology that is causing the impairments that we are seeing with imaging, both MBS and fees. And this allows us to really tailor our treatment plans to the individual needs of each patient that we see. So with that, we're going to talk a little bit about instrumental evaluations, both fees and MBS. So we know that both FEES and MBS are considered gold standard options because they allow us to get a visualization of swallowing impairments, which then better helps us to determine what the pathophysiology is for each patient that we are working with. Each study has its own pros and cons to use, and some patients actually benefit from using both MBS and FEES, which is sometimes referred to as the platinum standard. So in summary, both MBS and FEES allow us to assess swallow function, identify the swallowing impairments, and then tailor our treatment plans based on those impairments as well as the patient's values, beliefs, and goals. So this topic really brings us to TIMS and why it's important. So why do we need to record and review? When we look at the literature, we know that swallowing is very complex and it requires frame by frame analysis for us to truly understand what is going on during a swallow study. Additionally, if you work in healthcare, if you have at any point in your career or you do currently, you can probably attest to the fact that time constraints are a challenge that we face on a daily basis, whether at bedside, conducting FEES, or in the fluoro suite with radiology. So this is why it's important for us to record our studies so that we can review maybe at a later time when it's more feasible for us to sit and analyze frame by frame and also score and write our reports, etc. Additionally, like I mentioned, swallowing is really complex. And when we look at the literature, we see the trends that it's really important for us to be reviewing frame by frame, which can't always be done at the bedside or in radiology. Another aspect of the importance of recording is accessibility of imaging across the enterprise. So, you know, as speech language pathologists, we often collaborate with other members of the interdisciplinary team, whether it's GI, ENT, radiology, nursing. We collaborate with a lot of different people, and by recording and archiving our studies to PACS or VNA, this increases accessibility of our imaging to other members of the interdisciplinary team. Additionally, I know we are all very passionate about patient empowerment and informed choices. So by recording and archiving our studies, both MBS and FEES, we improve patient empowerment because we improve their ability to access the imagery, thereby increasing their ability to make informed decisions and have access to their own medical records. So this can be important not only for the patient, but also for us as healthcare providers because it allows us to assess their status and prognosis over time. Additionally, the last point that I want to make is the accessibility of standardized tools supported by evidence. You know, as we worked on standardization of both modified barium swallow studies and FEES, again, time constraints can be a big issue. So if we're able to record and review our studies, we can better increase our efficiency and reviewing those studies and implementing standardized scoring systems, which we will go through here in just a little bit. So with that, I'm going to hand over the floor to Tim because he is going to conduct a demonstration of the TIMS MVP software. Tim?
Great. Let's see. Okay. All righty. Can y'all see my screen? Brooke?
Yes.
Great. All right, so what I'll be showing here, and I'm going to try and walk sort of a fine line between, I know we have some patients out there, some caregivers, and speech pathologists, and a variety of people. So sort of walk through specifically what a modified barium swallow study might look like and sort of how we fit into that equation. The modified barium swallow studies are performed with a fluoroscope, and our TIMS system connects to that fluoroscope. So we record those studies and then provide tools for analyzing the studies and reporting on those studies afterwards so that the speech pathologist can provide feeding recommendations and things like that. So what we're all looking at right here is our software. It's called TIMS MVP. And if I was to walk into a fluoro room and get ready to, prepare to record a study, I'd be initially looking at what's called a work list. And so I'd find my patient for the day here, and I'll go ahead and select Alice McIntyre, totally fictional. And I'll say new, So I'm getting ready to prepare a new study. Gives me an opportunity to validate all the patient information is correct here. I'll go ahead and say okay. And this immediately brings me to what's called the live view. So I'm right now, we're all looking at, this is an actual study. So I have a recording of what a number of swallows and what it looks like during a modified barium swallow study. And so this provides the live preview, and the speech pathologist or radiologist in the room with you would be looking at this screen to be able to see exactly what's going on a swallow by swallow basis. And the way the studies are performed is they will bring the patients a variety of consistencies. So it might be like thin liquids and things like nectar and honey, puddings, solids, and things like that. And you're basically evaluating, part of the evaluation is to see how what a patient can eat safely and how efficiently they can consume those various consistencies. So as we talked about at the beginning here, part of what we're doing, and one of the things I'm very interested in, is providing standardized tools for both conducting the study and then evaluating the study afterwards. And so with that, one of the standardizations that we provide within the software is the use of a protocol called, there's a number of them, but today we'll be looking at what's called MBS-IMP. And this basically is giving me a list of consistencies that would be feeding the patient. So if I pop down here, I can take a look at these, and it's starting with a thin liquids here, and I move into thin liquids by cup, and then sequential swallows of thin liquid into nectars, and so we're getting progressively into more solid types of consistencies. There's a shortbread cookie in here. So more and more hospitals around the country and around the world are adopting various standardized protocols for performing the study, and that's what we're going to look at now. So I have selected a list here of consistencies called MBS-IMP, and I'll go ahead and turn on what's called protocol mode. And this allows me to label each one of these swallows as we're recording it. So I'll go ahead and click record. And let's see, well, the patient's swallowing the bolus right now. And the labels aren't going to line up exactly with what the patient's actually swallowing here. We'll have to use our imagination a little bit. And after the swallow has been recorded, it shows up on the left-hand side of the screen here, and it's automatically labeled with that consistency that the patient just swallowed. So, and I can move progressively through this list of consistencies here, and I'll go ahead and record another one. So typically the speech pathologist is going to the table, grabbing a perfect cup with that liquid or solid in it, bringing it to the patient. Sometimes the patient's feeding themselves, sometimes the speech pathologist is feeding them. And let's just get a few more clips here that I can use for our little demonstration here. Let's grab one here. So we're recording away. We're also recording audio at the same time. Sometimes we want to listen to a patient who's reacting. Are they coughing? Sometimes the speech pathologist will sort of verbally annotate the study as it's being performed. So I'm just going to get another couple of clips here. But you can see what that looks like. And there's swallows are super interesting. There's a lot going on. It's happening very quickly. There are a bunch of different muscles involved and other bone structures and things like that as well. So we need to record these studies at a very high frame rate, record these at 30 frames per second. So while I'm in the middle of the study here, I could actually come back and I clicked on the left-hand side here, and I want to review maybe a swallow that we just did, and I can scrub through this, and you can see how much detail we have from a temporal standpoint. In other words, on like a frame-by-frame standpoint, I could review this. So a speech pathologist might, after a swallow, if the patient, maybe they thought that the patient aspirated. In other words, there was liquid or the bolus was penetrating the airway. They might want to review and see, how did they do there? Should I continue forward? Is the patient at risk here? So they can review the study during while it's being performed as well. And then I could go back to live mode here and continue on with my study and continue recording. But this is enough for me right now to kind of move forward with. So we've got a number of clips. In this case, I think there are 18 different trials in MBS-IMP. Is that correct, Brooke?
Yeah.
Yeah. So 18 different swallows. And at this point, I could go ahead and send the study directly to what's called PACS. It's the Hospital Image Archiving database, basically. But instead, what I'll do is pretend that I'm sending it to the speech pathologist desktop in the hospital. And we have a version of the same software that we're looking at that the speech pathologist can now use to review that study sort of on a frame-by-frame basis and do a little more detail. So I'm going to go back here to my first trial, and I can, down on the bottom left-hand corner here of the screen, I can tell it, I want to loop this swallow and I want to play it back at 1/4 its original speed. So now this is playing along, but it's playing in slow motion. Of course, I can pause. I can go frame by frame as well. Let me find something that is a little easier to see that frame by frame motion. So I'm just hitting the arrow key and moving frame by frame. I can back up. So, and while I'm playing in slow motion here, I can also zoom in. So these tools allow the SLPs to really dig right in and see what's going on anatomically and get as much information as they need. They can follow the bolus as it's being swallowed while it's zoomed in. And so this is just going to keep looping around and around like that. I'm going to back out here. I can also, as an SLP, let me pause this for a moment, and I'll scrub through. And I might see something really interesting here. Maybe there is an aspiration here that I'd like to make note of and save for later and make it easy for people, my colleagues, to find that in the study after I send it to PACS. So what I'm going to do here is on my right-hand side, I've got some tools. One of these are our like annotation tools. One of these is an arrow. I could draw an arrow here and maybe a circle. This will help just somebody else that's looking at the study quickly see something that I noted while I was reviewing the study. I'm going to go ahead and take a snapshot of this with my my camera here. You can see it'll give me the ability to name this, and I'll just call it aspiration and say OK. And now it's appended that single frame. So this is just a snapshot. It's appended that to the end of my study here. I have the ones that I already, it's like a little overlay that was still on. So that's appended to the end of my my study. And let's see, one of the other features in the software that we talked about, a standardized protocol for performing the study and feeding the patient during the study. We're going to use that same protocol for reviewing and scoring the study. So I have the ability to drop down a scorecard here. So I'm going to say, yeah, I'd like to go ahead and score this. And we have a number of different scorecards. These are all sort of standardized protocols for, some of them are for reviewing and scoring or rating fees studies, as well as MBS-IMP. I've got PAS, the penetration aspiration scale, FOIS, Digest is another modified barium swallow study scoring for developed more for head and neck cancer patients. But what this allows me to do, the scorecard just hovers over the study as I move through it. So I can go back to the beginning here, and I could be reviewing along, and I'm going to make note of certain observations. And if I hover over, for instance, lip closure here, it gives you some hint text and says, this is, when you should be judging this. This one says judge at any point during the swallow. And then I can click here with a little pop-up menu, and I'm scoring this particular lip closure on rating it from 0 to 4. And this tells me what the 0 to 4 mean. So I can go ahead and I'll just move forward through this. plug some values in here, but I can be moving through my study and playing this at the same time and be scoring away. So this makes, by having these scorecards built right into the TIMS software, it makes it very efficient and easy to implement standards like this, which have been maybe a bit cumbersome in the past. If you have to go back and forth between two different software applications or off to a spreadsheet or something to be taking all these notes. Sometimes speech pathologists that are very busy. You know, they need to not only do these modified barium swallow studies during the day, but go see their patients and make rounds within the hospital and stuff. So we're trying to provide a way for them to implement these standardized protocols in a way that fits into their schedule. So I've captured all the information I want for here. I can review the results here. So it's giving me what's called an oral score, pharyngeal score, esophageal score as well. And I can take these scores now and copy them. I just happen to have a copy of WordPad here running, and I'm going to go ahead and paste this. So this becomes the basis for a report that might be passed along to others in the hospital that are making, reading this report again to determine, you know, how this patient, especially if they're an inpatient, how they should be safely fed. Can they drink liquids? Can they, you know, tolerate solids? And so all of this will be sort of revealed in some of these, some of the reporting. All right, and so that's a sort of one of our standardized scoring features. And then let's see, I want to hide my scorecard here for a moment. Oh, sorry, clicked the wrong button. That would be if I wanted to send it to PACS, which I don't want to do right now. And we get a little bit of, whenever we're trying to run our software and do webinars at the same time, poor computer is getting a little upset about trying to do too many things at once. So it's having a connection at the moment. Let's see if it'll recover.
While it's loading, I'll add one of the awesome things about TIMS for fees, since we just talked about TIMS for MBS, is the fact that it allows us to archive our fee studies to PACS or VNA. So if you've ever had difficulty doing that, you know, you have to share the studies on a USB drive. You no longer have to do that with TIMS MVP, which is really awesome.
Yeah, let's just pop back in here. I relaunched the TIMS software. Yeah, my poor computer's just trying to do too many things at once. Usually you're not doing a live webinar while you're performing a modified barium swallow study. So let's open a study I already have saved here. I know we're just about into our Q&A, but I'm just about to the end of what I wanted to show you as well. So, and let's see, we'll go to studies. These are all the studies that I have saved on here. I'll open up Alice McIntyre. One nice thing about TIMS that we just are witnessing here right now is that it, even if something stops working along the way, it saved everything that I just did. And really what I wanted to do is go ahead and give you a sneak preview of sort of where we're headed here as well, in that all of that work that I've been doing, scoring the study, I might be taking notes along the way. It all feeds a reporting system that we're building into the software, and this is coming out here in just another couple of months. So here's, you know, basic information that I pulled from that was provided about the patient when I started creating the study. I can also quickly take more notes here along the way, but really what I want to show here is that MBS IMP scorecard that I completed is automatically inserted into my report as well, as well as the that snapshot that I made too. It gets popped right in here. Any notes that I took along the way. So this is a nice sort of logical workflow that allows the SLPs to perform the study, come back, review it, score it, be taking notes, and it's feeding into a report so that they can really spend as much time as they need to and put a lot of effort into you know, providing great information for other people that would be acting upon it. So I think we're right at the bottom of the hour here, and I'll stop sharing my screen. I think we wanted to open it up to the floor.
Excellent. Tim and Brooke, thank you so much for sharing that information with us. I'm going to pull up some questions here, and while I do that, I want to thank you. We have a very diverse audience with us tonight, from people living with severe dysphagia who are struggling to connect with somebody that can provide good treatment options for them, to people who have authored textbooks of mine for my dysphagia courses that I've taken. So it's a wide audience to present to. One of the questions that I have here for you, from a person who's struggling to find answers, and they've waited months to get in to see a specialist to have a swallow study performed, what sort of questions would you ask if you were a person going in for a swallow study? What would you ask of the clinician performing that, to make sure they know what they're doing and make sure they're doing what they need to figure out the answers?
Tim, do you want me to take this one?
Yes, please.
Yeah. As a speech pathologist, I always encourage my patients to be an advocate for themselves and to really ask a lot of questions. So asking about training, asking about, interdisciplinary collaboration, and being completely transparent about what symptoms that you're currently experiencing, as well as your past and current medical history. It's definitely okay to ask those questions about training and background and collaboration, as well as not being afraid to ask for a second opinion. I always encourage my patients that if they have further questions that I can't answer, or they're wanting a second opinion, to definitely pursue that, because it's really important that we are our own advocates, because obviously even us as healthcare professionals, we're patients as well. So I would just really encourage to have that open dialogue and not be afraid to ask questions.
Thanks, Brooke. We have a question here about the TIMS technology and some clarification. Wondering if TIMS is a tool to record and manage and help with report writing. It doesn't include the endoscope or the fluoro machines. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. So typically the fluoroscopes would be already there in the hospital. We just connect. We don't sell any of those other modalities, they're called, but we do connect to any of them, any fluoroscope or any endoscope, and do the recording and those other pieces that I just showed you a moment ago.
What percentage of hospitals or clinics that perform FEES and MBS studies use TIMS?
It's a pretty high percentage at this point. We have been doing this for so long now that we've become basically the standard for care for performing, especially the modified barium swallow studies. So we're in the vast majority of hospitals around the country that are performing MBS studies. We've begun getting more involved in recording FEES studies, and one of the issues that a lot of speech departments face is the cost of a FEES system. The endoscopes that are being used by the ENT department can be, $70,000 to $150,000, and we're trying to partner with endoscope manufacturers that have USB scopes, and then our TIMS system, and bring that cost to be, a third of that $150,000 or less. So make it more affordable for hospitals to get a FEES program going.
And is TIMS available internationally?
It is, yes. We have distribution partners around the world, and if anybody, I don't know if our contact information is available through this, Elizabeth, but they could, info@tims.com actually is the easiest way. If you send it to any, if you're looking for something locally outside the US, it's info@tims.com, or even in the US too, of course.
I'll make sure everybody has that information in the webinar email that will go out after this. Another question for you, the TIMS technology, are there any other similar technologies available? So competitors, for example?
Yeah, so on the modified barium swallow side, not so much really. What we typically compete with for MBS are hospitals that are still using just the fluoroscope only by itself to record those studies. And the real disadvantage there is that they are limited in how the frame rate that they can record those studies at. So we were all looking at that earlier and seeing how fast moving and how much stuff is going on during a swallow study. So you need to record at a very high frame rate so you don't miss any of the action. Basically, an aspiration can be, less than 1/10 of a second, or maximum penetration of an aspiration anyhow. So on the MBS side, we're really used by pretty much everybody unless they're using just the fluoroscope, and so we're slowly, closing that gap. On the fee side, a number of the high-end scope manufacturers, company like Olympus and Pentax and things, they have some of their own recording apparatus, but TIMS, when you're using TIMS with a fee scope, it allows you to follow that same workflow that you're doing for modified barium swallow studies. So because so many hospitals have TIMS for MBS, they use it with their fees. Those same studies, after they're recording them, come back to your desktop. You're using the same tool for evaluating it, scoring it, reporting on it, and sending it off to PACS. So it's makes a nice workflow to be using the same tool for both.
Thank you. A question here from an SLP for Brooke, or maybe for both of you, but it says that Brooke, you just scoped her on Sunday, so you have a person. But if we were looking to purchase FEES equipment, should the SLP that's interested in purchasing the FEES equipment check with that company to see if they're compatible with TIMS, and are there certain systems that are more compatible than others?
So TIMS is compatible with any scope. So like Tim mentioned, it can be used with any fluoro unit as well as any scope. So whether you have PACCOM, Atmos, Olympus, Karl Storz, we have people all over the country and internationally that are using TIMS. Just before this call, I was talking with an SLP in Australia who's looking at adding TIMS to her Olympus scope that she has. So it is compatible, and you can work with our customer support team to get that set up.
I'll just throw in there, if you have a piece of equipment that you have a question about specifically, whether it's an Olympus scope or something, our account managers, our sales team would be able to even refer you to hospitals that have that. We're probably already connected to it somewhere. So.
Another question here from somebody who's an SLP. Do they need to have the TIMS unit in the fluoro suite, or can they send a pre-recorded video to the TIMS tool?
Yeah, typically, the advantage to TIMS is that it's connected to the fluoroscope and actually doing the recording portion of it. So I would need to maybe know a little bit more about what you're hoping to accomplish, possibly what your goals are, but you really want to be using the TIMS system to do the recordings. That's the first step, is getting high resolution, high frame rate imagery, and then our tools can be used on the back end for reviewing the studies as well. We do sell our software separately, the TIMS review software, but most fluoroscopes are set up to send just directly to PACS, so it may be a bit cumbersome to to try and get the imagery from a fluoro only over to TIMS review.
Question.
I don't think that I really necessarily explained that during the initial slides, but if you don't have TIMS for MBS, kind of to explain workflow, when you're in the fluoro suite and you're recording the study, if you don't have enough time to sit there and edit your study right in radiology, you can send it to TIMS review, like Tim mentioned. So at my hospital, I can just send the study up to TIMS review, go to my office, sit there, edit it, document scorecards, all that stuff, and then send that to PACS. So that's why that is a really nice workflow.
About how much time would it take to review and edit the swallow study?
It just really depends. Yeah, I think it just depends on like the complexity of the patient and a multitude of factors, I would say. But the nice thing about the scorecards with the TIMS MVP software is it makes it way faster. For example, with MBS IMP, I see this pretty frequently in like SIG 13 and online, people want to use it, but they're just struggling because there's 17 components. There's a lot that goes into scoring that, or like with Digest, I get a lot of questions about Digest. Because it's in the software, I can easily use both MBS IMP and Digest in my clinical practice at work and just score it right in the study. And then put that over to my documentation. So it really cuts down the scoring and documentation, in my opinion. Makes it a lot faster.
So I have another question here. Can the system take 2 inputs simultaneously? So if somebody was performing a FEES and MBS?
Currently no. And I see the questions from Dr. Steele, who we just met with last week, and I feel compelled to let those that are watching here too know that although we have MBS IMP and Digest as current scorecards, Dr. Steele has developed a protocol as well called Aspect C that we're working on right now. So stay tuned. But currently, no, we actually are also working on a new version of a TIMS system that can take 2 inputs at the same time, but it's, I don't have exact availability for you yet, unfortunately.
Thanks for that. We have a longer question here, and I might read it word for word if that's okay, just to make sure I get it correct. There's somebody on the call that says they have a very old TIMS system at their hospital that they're working on getting upgraded. And they thought that they were recording at 30 frames per second, but they started questioning this. And the radiology tech was helping them switch it to 10 frames per second because it was at 7.5. And when she said that she needed it at 30 frames per second, the tech looked at her like she was crazy and said that's way too much radiation. On the computer with the TIMS software, it showed 30 pulses per second and 10 frames per second. What is the difference between those two? So the pulses and the frames per second.
Sure. Well, first off, there is some very good evidence-based research that shows that performing the study at 30 frames per second is still a very minimal amount of radiation. And again, like we said up front, we're not going to provide medical advice here, but if you could contact us and we could put you in touch or provide some of those materials for you, because it's definitely doing a disservice to the patient to be recording at such a low frame rate. And this is what I was talking about earlier, the fluoroscopes by themselves there are 2 things going on. There's the pulsing of the actual radiation coming out, and then there's a recording piece on the other side of that, and the patient's in between there. So there's a plate over here that's doing the recording. And you can pulse at 7.5 frames per second, and on the fluoroscope is timing that with recording it at 7.5 frames per second. All fluoroscopes, though, can go into what's called continuous mode, and they will just continuously radiate, and but they're not able to capture at 30 frames per second. So that's where we take over the recording part of it. So you put the fluoroscope into continuous mode and let the TIMS system record, and that's how you achieve those 30 frames per second recording rates. So that's the disconnect. There's pulse rate and there's recording rate, and they are 2 different things. And so when you want to record at 30 frames per second, you're putting the fluoroscope into continuous mode. And again, be happy to help you address that more, Angela. I see who asked the question there. And if you want to drop me a line or info@tims.com, I'll see it there too.
I'm going to say in the advocacy docs that we provided for this presentation, if you look at the MBS advocacy doc, some of that literature is cited in that document.
Yes. I'm not sure if I mentioned that at the start. For everybody that's on the call, there's on your toolbar a handouts box where you can download. Brooke and Tim shared 2 advocacy handouts, one for FEES and one for MBS. So you're welcome to download that. And I'll also send them as an attachment if you're unable to download them from your toolbar. I have a question here, maybe Brooke for you, just a general question about modified barium swallow studies. For people that might have allergies or intolerances to the foods that they generally give, are there alternatives that they can offer during the study?
Yeah, so again, and we have documentation on the importance of standardization of barium products. So if you're not able to ingest the Varibar products, at that point you might explore utilizing FEES, the flexible endoscopic evaluation that we talked about, with your speech pathologist, or you could talk with your speech pathologist about what other options there are for MBS. That being said, Veribar currently here in the United States is the standardized product that most hospital systems use. So if you're not able to ingest that, then I, as a clinician, would definitely look at exploring fees.
Thank you. And what would you say is the biggest advantage of adding TIMS to a fee system, to a mobile fee system?
Yeah, I guess, Tim, I'll take this one. Sorry, I just jumped in because I'm excited about it.
Of course.
I think, I have a lot of friends that do mobile fees, and one of the things that I think is really exciting about TIMS for fees, specifically mobile fees, are the scorecards that Tim mentioned. Like he mentioned with Aspect C, we're looking at adding additional scorecards for fees. Right now, digest fees is in our scoring system, but Tim's been working with some other researchers and experts in the field to add in additional fee-specific scorecards for our partners that do conduct fees. So I think that is a really awesome component that we add. And additionally, they will have access to the reporting feature that Tim went through. We didn't get a chance to look at it, but other aspects of the TIM software that's beneficial for fees are the ability to adjust the picture. So you can adjust the contrast, you can zoom in and zoom out, adjust the brightness. Those telestrations that Tim mentioned, I think, are awesome, both for MBS and fees. As speech pathologists, we're not supposed to diagnose necessarily, but we definitely see things and can make hypotheses about what those things are, so we can use those telestrations and annotations that Tim demonstrated to highlight those in our studies and add those in as screenshots. So those are just some of the things. But the last thing that I really want to point out and highlight that I actually didn't know until I joined the TIMS team is really the emphasis on the speech language pathologist. I've always had TIMS in my clinical practice for MBS, and joining the TIMS team as a clinician, I've just really been blown away by the focus on our field and the customer support. So you have access to that if you get TIMS for mobile fees as well. If you call from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., somebody will answer the phone and be able to help you, which I think is a huge win, because if you have an issue and it's involving a patient, you want somebody to pick up the phone and help you. So that's been really, really cool to see from this side of things.
Question here from a patient: if they wanted to see the recording of their swallow study, is that something that's easily available to them?
So it depends on, it depends on a couple of factors, I would say, and Tim, feel free to chime in, but, for a lot of people that do fees in hospital systems, we have historically had difficulty archiving those studies to PACS or VNA, which is kind of like the library, if you will, of medical records. So a lot of people are getting those studies recorded on USB drives, which makes it a little bit more challenging, which is why TIMS MVP is so crucial, in my opinion, for endoscopic studies. That being said, if someone has TIMS for both fees and MBS, it should be pretty easy for the patient to get a copy of their study through medical records. If that study has been archived to PACS or VNA, then they should be able to get that through the medical records within the hospital system. Now, if you're working with a speech pathologist that's in a private practice or a mobile fees provider, they'll probably have a little bit of a different process than the hospital system. But so long as the study is recorded and archived in the PACS or the VNA, there shouldn't be too much of a challenge in that. Tim, do you have anything that you would add to that?
No, it's just like it's like going in and getting an x-ray, and I've had a couple of total knee replacements, and whenever I get x-rays done, I ask for a copy of it. They typically give me a DVD right there on the spot before I leave, so you should be able to ask for your MBS studies exactly the same way.
And if you're a patient, I would ask that up front if you are wanting those records, because not every location has that capability, and they may just end up giving you screenshots, which for swallowing, like I mentioned, it's a really complex process that is a continuum. So a screenshot can only tell you so much.
Thank you. And I just want to encourage our audience to continue asking questions. If there's anything on your mind, please feel free to add those. We have some poll questions. I don't know, Tim and Brooke, if you want me to launch either of those, I'm happy to.
Great.
We can do the first one here. Just to get a sense of our audience, I'm going to launch this poll here quick. So you should see a question on your screen that says, which of the following do you use in your clinical practice? The first one is modified barium swallow studies, These, both, neither. And for those who aren't clinicians, you can select this isn't applicable to me. I'll give you just a few more seconds here and I'll close the poll once it looks like most people have voted.
And I know we have a large international audience here, and it's very interesting how the modified barium swallow studies differ around the world, the use of them, who's performing them, and things like that. So yeah, I wish we had put some questions together around that, but it's an interesting topic for discussion as more and more countries around the world begin adopting MBS as a instrumental study, and we've been finding more and more countries from around the world, emailing us to see can they, put a TIMS in Turkey, or we have a lot of Middle Eastern countries as well coming on board. So it's fun to watch that grow.
It's exciting. I think, can you see the results on your screen there from the first poll question? About 40% of people are using swallow studies, 15% are using both, and about a third of our audience says this question's not applicable to me.
Yep, that's
And
about
4% saying neither. And let me just launch the second one here. So for those of you who are using standard, or who are doing swallow studies, does your team use standardized scoring for instrumental evaluations?
Yeah, like MBS IMP or Digest or Aspect C.
I'll give people just a few more seconds.
Yeah.
All right, and I'll close the poll here. It looks like we have most responses in. Let me share the results here. So it looks like around 38% say yes, they're using some type of standardized scoring, and about a third say this isn't applicable to me, and 20% or so say they're not.
Yep, I think
we have recommendations, Tim and Brooke, on what the best way to adopt a standardized scoring protocol is for your team if you're not using one and interested in starting.
Go ahead, Brooke.
Yeah, so I would say the first thing is to really get that buy-in and provide education about why it's important. It's really exciting, in my opinion, to see our field move towards adoption of standardization. There's been a lot in the literature for several years about this, and as we know, it can take 17 years for research to get into clinical practice. So it seems like things are moving quickly as of late, which is exciting. So I would say, first and foremost, education and awareness about why it's important so that the people on your team understand the benefits to it, and not that it's just another time suck. It's actually beneficial not only for us from an analyzation and interpretation standpoint, but for bettering our patient outcomes. And then, making it accessible and easy for people to implement. I think that's, one of the biggest challenges we face in healthcare with ever-growing caseloads and productivity requirements. At least I can only speak to here in the United States, but that's a big problem, that many of us face. So adopting ways to make it efficient and effective, I think is really key. If you can do those things, you can really win the team over and get them to adopt this into their clinical practice. But that's part of why I think TIMS is so valuable, because it does make these tools really accessible and easy to implement. Like I said, I'm able to do Digest and MBS IMP in the acute care setting pretty much on a weekly basis, and it doesn't take, ample amounts of time that's detracting from my productivity. So if I can do it, I know that you all can do it as well. And I think it's really just that awareness.
Thank you. A quick question here. What does TIMS stand for?
Doesn't stand for me. The first question, I forgot to get that out of the way right up front, but it actually stands for Total Imaging Management System, which was that was the first iteration of TIMS, was developed down in Florida actually, and but we don't really we just use the acronym now, TIMS.
Right. I was going to back up. I think there's a follow-up to the question that we had asked earlier about the recordings. And is it TIMS that provides the recordings or the hospital's PACS system? I guess where's the recording coming from?
Yeah, we come from the hospital PACS. So just ask whoever your caregiver is at the hospital and make a request, a formal request for a copy of the study, and you'll either get it from the imaging department or you know, the TIMS actually can output onto CDs or DVDs, but they typically want it to go through the whole imaging department first. So
Usually it's like a request through the medical records department. You just fill out some paperwork.
Should a patient ask whether the hospital system is using a TIMS system when they go in for their swallow study? Is that a question that would be threatening to an SLP or something that would be appreciated?
I mean, this is, you know, my opinion. I think, you know, if you find this software beneficial based on this presentation, or you want more information, we'd be happy to provide it. It's like anything. Like I said, I always encourage my patients to be advocates for themselves. So if you feel that this software would be beneficial in the evaluation of your swallow function, then I would say 100% ask. At the very least, I would definitely be asking, you know, are you able to record at 30 frames per second, and are you able to give me a copy of my full study? That's what I would want as a patient. And so I would definitely ask for that. I personally, as a clinician, and this is biased because I work for TIMS, but I have always loved having TIMS in my clinical practice because of the capabilities of that frame-by-frame analysis and all of the features that it has. We didn't get to this part of the presentation just due to time, but TIMS is really integral in me helping to develop a program for people with head and neck cancer, and that ability to record those studies and go back and pull them to evaluate, you know, prognosis and progress was really vital. So that's my opinion. I would definitely ask about recording capabilities.
Excellent, thank you. As we get to the top of the hour here, Tim and Brooke, I just want to give you a chance for any final conclusions here that you would like to share with our audience before we wrap things up. And if any questions come in that we didn't get to, or if I missed any of your questions, please feel free to email us and I will pass those on to Brooke and Tim.
Brooke, do you have anything?
No, I would just say thank you all for joining. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. And if you want, you know, more free information about dysphagia or what we're doing at TIMS, we are posting daily posts on our social media channels that are all backed by evidence. So all of the research is cited in those posts. So if you would like to learn more, feel free to check out those resources.
Yeah, let's just add, if you are a speech pathologist and you're looking to advocate for your patients and put something like a TIMS system in your facility, our team is very good at just helping to educate other decision makers within the hospital, help them understand why it's so important for you to have the tools that you need to, you know, adequately review the studies and do the diagnosis. So we work on a very educational kind of standpoint. So don't hesitate to ask.
Excellent. Well, thank you both for your time tonight to present to our community. We have a very diverse audience, so I appreciate you putting this together for us. If anybody has other questions that weren't addressed, please feel free to email those to us. It's info@nfosd.com. I'll be sending out a post-webinar survey that takes less than 3 minutes. We appreciate your responses. I will also include tonight's handouts in that email, as well as some upcoming events and initiatives offered by the foundation. So with that, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us. Tim and Brooke, thank you for your time tonight, and we hope to see you again in May. Take care, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in. Take care.